Hey everyone, so a few weeks ago we had a Let's Talk PlayStation topic about how the Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot had felt that the next generation of consoles would actually be our last sort of traditional sense of consoles where you'd go out to the store, buy a $400 or $500 box and use discs to play games, and that actually moving forward beyond that we would be doing streaming services. And during that topic, we had kind of talked about a little bit about how that just seems somewhat ignorant for somebody that's such a major figurehead in the industry, just based off the pure fact that a vast majority of consumers don't want to stream their games still, or how about the fact that a vast majority of the world still doesn't have a stable internet connection to make something like that work, because at least with games, the very important thing about playing a video game over the internet is the input lag and the actual responsiveness and quality of the stream. It's not necessarily like it's not like consuming a movie or TV show. This is something where you need to have complete immediacy, and it needs to work well, and the technology just isn't quite there. And who knows if it'll even be there, say, a decade from now. Ideally, you would like to think that it would be, but at the same time, a lot of consumers still don't want to do that. Well, anyway, the interesting thing that I stumbled upon recently was the Kotaku article from Keza McDonald, and it just kind of talks a little bit about how when Keza would ever talk to major figureheads in the industry, whether it was Microsoft, Bethesda, EA, she would often ask them what the next big thing in video games is going to be. And while she sometimes expected something like them saying, oh, blockchain's going to be the next big thing, or VR was the next big thing, the one thing that she kept taking away from it was that every single major figurehead had mentioned streaming. And I guess that's what's slightly more alarming or newsworthy or discussion-worthy about this topic, which is that, sure, we kind of just dismissed it, a few weeks ago when we were talking about the Ubisoft CEO, but when you start to really think about this and understand that when you have EA's Patrick Sutherland, Phil Spencer, of course, during E3 had made some major promises about how they're working on streaming services. We know Sony's been doubling down on this for sure with PlayStation Now. Of course, Ubisoft, again, we just had that news story, right? When you have so many people with such substantial power in the games industry saying that we're going to be doing streaming, it seems like whether we like it or not, we're going to be doing streaming. And that, I guess, is the jumping off point, because that's what's somewhat frightening about this, is that even if we don't want it, or even if we're not ready for it, this may very well be a situation where a lot of consumers are dragged into this kicking and screaming. And the few times that we've talked about streaming, yeah, people don't want it, or the internet's not there. You've got situations with the OnLive streaming service, which was shuttered a few years back, and a lot of people like to say that they were ahead of their time. I know whenever we talk about PlayStation Now, the big thing there is that Sony's got 650 games on PlayStation Now, and it's actually a great deal when you consider how many games you're getting, but people just don't want to stream their games. They don't care about the price. They don't care about the games that are available on the library. The very fact that it's over the internet, people don't want to do it. But the fact that Sony invested so much money into that purchase of Gaikai back in 2013 or 2012, whenever they purchased Gaikai, the streaming service, all that streaming technology, they were basically future-proofing themselves. And you got to figure that 5, 10, 20 years down the line, PlayStation Now is going to be its own standalone service, and you may not even be buying PlayStation hardware anymore. It's all about the accessibility, and I think what's going to be really interesting is to see how this sort of divulges, because once we're past, say, PlayStation 5 and the next generation Xbox, whatever Microsoft decides to call it, what is PlayStation 6 going to look like? What is another Xbox going to look like beyond that? Will it be, say, a $100 PlayStation 6 that is just say akin to like an Amazon Fire Stick, or Roku box, an Apple TV, where you're basically just buying a small little box that has a customized UI for your television, and that's your gateway into multiple streaming services, be that Netflix, Hulu, or PlayStation Now, which PlayStation Now would probably be your access into high-quality PlayStation 6 quality games. Or, again, you wouldn't even really need to use that nomenclature anymore of PlayStation 6. You would just... these would just be high-end, crazy, good-looking video games, because, of course, the hardware workload is being offset somewhere else while you're just streaming the game over the internet. That's kind of the idea. And, of course, when you look at it from a publisher's perspective, this is what, they want to get as much money as possible out of the consumer. So when you have a situation where people no longer have to buy a $400, say, PlayStation 6, they could spend $50 and get a small little box, put it on their TV, and all of a sudden they're playing extremely high-quality, beautiful games. And then with a $5, $10 monthly subscription service, they're getting access to all the latest and greatest games. We could very well be in a situation where, say, and who knows when that generation, we're on generation 8, mind you, so PS5 would be generation 9, so generation 10, which would, good lord, 2027, 2028, who knows, you know, my guess would be as good as yours, but it would certainly be probably well over a decade from now, but you know, that would be the thing. And the other sort of barrel that we have to drop down here, which is that there are so many major publishers, and you know, they're going to want to do their own streaming services because they have their own IP under their belt. So Ubisoft would want to maybe charge you $5 for all those Ubisoft games. EA would definitely want to charge you something crazy, right? $10, $12 a month to play all their titles. Sony and Microsoft, I mean, they're hardware manufacturers, sure, but they're also publishers, so you would have your repertoire of Sony and Microsoft games. They would be charging you fees for that as well. I mean, you got to... that's the thing. Where is Sony and Microsoft going to find their place when you're going a decade later, right? Sure, they're going to offer their own streaming services, Sony, PlayStation Now, Microsoft, whatever they call it, and then Ubisoft, EA, Bethesda. I mean, but what you have to understand is that's so many different plans, so many different possible avenues for streaming services. One is going to have to rise above all. Because one is going to have to be that mainline marketplace where most people start subscribing to, you know what I mean? When you look at, like, video, for example, there's, like, a few contenders, like Netflix and Hulu. Those are the big two, right? Amazon Prime Video, that's 3, but there's not many others. I mean, there's a few smaller ones, but for the most part, those are the 3 that kind of rose to the ranks. When you look at all the video game publishers we have, and then Sony and Microsoft, I mean, we've got more than 3. One of those is going to rise above the other, and then there's the fact that, well, at the end of the day, the big catch to streaming is that you would be able to play your games anywhere from any device. So that's why Sony's been testing the waters with, doing PlayStation Now on PC, allowing PS4 games to be played on a PC. Microsoft unifying Xbox and blurring the lines between what it means to be an Xbox game, because now you're earning Xbox achievements on the Switch. You're buying a game once and you're getting access to it on the PC. Microsoft understands this future, and they've been doing that for the past few years now, and that's why so many people have been saying, well, that's weird. Why even buy an Xbox One? And I think that's because Microsoft knows that well over 10 years from now, there just may not be a situation where you're buying an Xbox, that's why, you know, the Ubisoft CEO comment was somewhat polarizing to think of, like, how there won't be a traditional PS6, because let's face it, we don't want it. A lot of people are still going to buy, like, when PlayStation 5 comes out and whatever Microsoft does, they're probably going to sell pretty well, like really well. So to go another console generation where it's still pretty much how we've always known it, going to stores, buying discs, even downloading games, again, I don't see it going into the favor of streaming. So how could Sony and Microsoft just not release another traditional box based off of what PS5 and the next Xbox will do? They're probably going to do just fine numbers. And then there's also the theory that, well, let's say a PS6, let's say, yes, it's certainly a heavy focus on streaming, but there's nothing stopping Sony from still releasing a $600 box just for people to buy it, have the traditional buying experience and buying games one by one, but still also offering that $50 box that people can just stream exclusively from. You know what I mean? There's no problem with options, certainly. So there's always that possibility. And you'll notice there's a distinct lack of Nintendo in this conversation, because I think it goes without saying, but Nintendo's probably still going to be producing traditional consoles for a long time, because that's their forte, and also they just don't understand what the hell the internet is to begin with. They're still, to this day, using friend codes. And the Switch is awesome. I mean, the Switch is the quintessential video gamey type console, couch, on-the-go, handheld type thing, right? And that's why it's doing so well, because it's serving that niche that so many people still love and enjoy to this day. So I think it goes without saying that Nintendo won't really be doing anything heavy in terms of streaming or not releasing traditional consoles for a while. They'll probably still be doing that well past whatever a PlayStation 5 and next Xbox is going to look like. But that's just conjecture, of course, but I think a lot of people would probably agree with me. It's just kind of that's the thing about this conversation. It's all going to come to a head. And it's an early conversation to have, but it's one we should really think about, because that's what this whole thing started with this Kotaku article, is that, yeah, we don't want it. The internet's not there, or the internet, connection's not there for most homes, but every major video game figure with power and money and decision making, they want to heavily pursue this. And it'll be interesting to see if, like, most consumers, like, let's say all these services come out and people just still don't buy it. Like, there's just all this wasted money and all this wasted resources into building these services that people still don't want, or will it actually take off? Because at the end of the day, having a conversation about what could happen 10, 15 years from now is still, it's almost like, it could go anywhere. Thank you all for being a part of this discussion, and I think it's an important one to have, certainly. Actually, if you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you probably remember a little series I did called Ryan on Gaming, where it was basically this, right? Where one specific topic in the games industry gets its own video, and not just a situation where I cover it and let's talk PlayStation with multiple news stories. I'd like to try and revisit this format again, just with major news stories that are definitely worth talking about. More current event stuff, certainly, but yeah, we'll do some more discussion for sure. Anyway, that's all I got for you in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.